Hello, everybody. This is Breaking Ish, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different. For the last 20 episodes, I have been going over the January 6th final report, and as of yesterday, I finished the uh, the chapters of the January 6th committee report. Next, I will go over the recommendations of the committee and then the appendices. Before I do that, I wanted to go back and review with you the seditious conspiracy statute and also do a brief overview of what a conspiratorial crime means. So, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. I rely on your support, and let's dive in. A conspiratorial crime is different from a direct crime. And here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a definition from Cornell's Legal Information Institute database about conspiracy. So the database reads, conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people to commit an illegal act, along with an intent to achieve the agreement's goal. Okay? So here, I want you to separate that. Say the illegal act is to steal an election. Okay. Now, the object, the illegal act, is stealing the election. Now, a conspiracy happens when one person who has the intention of stealing the election goes and agrees with another person and then another person, at least one other person, that person, that second person, is also going to agree with person number one to steal an election. The crime of conspiracy is not the illegal act of stealing the election. The crime of conspiracy in American jurisprudence is the agreement two people form to be able to steal an election. And here's another nuance. There are certain jurisdictions and there are certain laws that statutorily require an overt act, meaning an act that proves that person one and person two were engaged in an illegal act to get to the final illegal act. And that illegal act, actually the overt act doesn't have to be an illegal act. The overt act has to be an action that precipitates or materializes the end goal. The database reads, in most US jurisdictions, there's a requirement of an overt act towards the furthering of the agreement. An overt act is a statutory requirement, not a constitutional one. It means that the Supreme Court, has interpreted the crime of conspiracy and the statutes that are conspiracy statutes to determine what is required to prove that particular conspiratorial act. In some statutes, it requires that there is an overt act. Not only that there is an agreement between two or more people, but also that there is an overt act. And in the most general conspiracy statute in the US Code Book, 18 USC section 371, it requires an overt act. There are certain conspiracy statutes that don't require an overt act. Seditious conspiracy under 18 USC 2384, from the reading of the statute, reads like it falls somewhere in between, because the general conspiracy statute talks about a general overt act. It doesn't define the overt act that would qualify as something that evidences the conspiracy. In seditious conspiracy, the statute is far more specific, but then again, within the specificity, there are latitudes. And I'm going to read you the statute. Before I read the statute, I'm going to read on Cornell's encyclopedia about this. Conspiracy generally carries a penalty on its own. In addition, conspiracy allows for derivative liability where conspirators can also be punished for the illegal acts carried out by other members, even if they were not directly involved. So, gives you an idea that the people who are part of the conspiracy don't have to be at the insurrection, for example, or they don't have to be the ones who go out and themselves push people towards a fake elector scheme. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to be the ones who are holding the pen, who signed those fake elector documents. It has to qualify within the understanding of they had an agreement to commit that illegal act, not to commit the overt act. The overt act is just one link to get to the final illegal act. Thus, where one or more members of the conspiracy committed illegal acts to further the conspiracy's goals, all of the members of the conspiracy may be held accountable for those acts. Where no one has actually committed a criminal act, the punishment varies. Some conspiracy statutes assign the same assignment for the conspiracy as the target offense. Others impose lesser penalties. So it's a very statutory construction of what conspiracy is. And, the policy behind that is conspiracy is a very, it's not a solidified crime. It is a living, breathing creature which involves the meeting of the minds of two or more people. And because of that, because it is an inchoate offense, it is specifically lineated through statute so as to make it specific as to how it would be enforced. So now that brings me to the seditious conspiracy statute. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the statute and I'm going to break it down for you. And, many people have gone over this. We've talked about seditious conspiracy. I have talked about seditious conspiracy for well over 2 years now. Most people have talked about seditious conspiracy from the time that Stuart Rhodes was indicted for seditious conspiracy, and then he was convicted of seditious conspiracy, mind you, independent of Donald Trump. And now the Proud Boys are going on the seditious conspiracy trial, independent of Donald Trump. It's important to understand that these are separate cases from the seditious conspiracy case against Donald Trump. And that's because their conduct and their planning, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, their actions amounted to, independent of any meeting of the mind with Donald Trump, rose to the level of seditious conspiracy within their organizations, where there were definitely more than two people who were agreeing to commit an offense, an illegal act. So with that, I will read the statute. If two or more persons in any state or territory or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States contrary to the authority thereof. They shall be each fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. Now, here we have conspire to overthrow, comma. And now I'm going to break it down where I'm going to add conspire to each of the subsections of this statute and draw it out for you so you understand. The statute reads that if two or more people conspire to overthrow, conspire to put down, or conspire to destroy by force the government of the United States, or conspire to levy war against them, or conspire to by force to oppose by force the authority thereof, or conspire by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force, or conspire to by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States contrary to the authority thereof, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. So each of those sections, conspiring to overthrow, conspiring to put down, conspiring to destroy by force the government of the United States, conspiring to levy war against them, conspiring to oppose by force the authority thereof, conspiring to by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or conspire to by force seize, take, or possess any property of the United States. Conspire to all of these things separately. A defendant under this statute does not have to have all of these requirements simply because the statute reads or instead of and in each of those, after each of those commas. Okay, so for somebody to satisfy the statute enough to be held accountable under it, they have to conspire to overthrow, conspire to put down, conspire to destroy by force the government of the United States, conspire to levy war against the United States. And now I'm going to get to the parts that are pertinent. Or to oppose by force the authority thereof. Donald Trump conspired with more than one person to oppose by force the authority of the United States. And by force meaning he hurled an insurrection at Congress when they were meeting in a joint session of Congress to certify the votes that would have ensured continuity of government for our country and our republic. To conspire by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States. By conspiring to defraud the Electoral Count Act, by conspiring to hinder or delay, which they did for over 3 hours, any law of the United States, the law being the Electoral Count Act. Donald Trump conspired with several other people to, by force, prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States. Or conspired to, by force, seize, take, or possess any property of the United States. For the 3 hours that the joint session of Congress was delayed and hindered, it was done so by force, by the force of Donald Trump's insurrection, by the force of the people who have testified in their own criminal trials that they have followed Donald Trump's orders and taken the Capitol by force. So much so that after Donald Trump sent out that video of retreating at 4:17, that they left the Capitol minutes after that. It wasn't a contemplation. It wasn't a debate. It wasn't a majority win sort of voting that happened in the rotunda after Donald Trump made that announcement. They left. They explicitly said that this is what our commander-in-chief has ordered. It may have seemed like free speech and bravado before, but when those words were uttered, our commander-in-chief ordered us to be here. Our commander-in-chief told us to leave, and that's why we left. Stephen Ayers said that. Several of the defendants said that. Now that the Proud Boys seditious conspiracy trial is going on, they are saying that they followed orders of Donald Trump. And that shows the ordering doesn't show a meeting of the mind. You can order somebody who is far enough attenuated to do that. It is the links between, it is the connection, the conspiracy. In order for you to have a conspiracy, there has to be a meeting of the mind. There has to be an agreement between two or more people to commit an illegal act. So in order for the conspiracy part of the crime to attach to Donald Trump, if he were to be part of either the Oath Keepers or the Proud Boys seditious conspiracy trial, then the government would have had to prove that there was an agreement between Stuart Rhodes and there was an agreement between Donald Trump. And I believe that's the most difficult part for them to prove. The agreements that happened between Donald Trump and Roger Stone and Alex Jones and Mark Meadows, these agreements are far more provable. How they relate to the insurrection is provable through the links in the January 6th report that links Donald Trump to every subgroup that facilitated, that aided and abetted Donald Trump's plan to overthrow the government. Because the end illegal act, the final illegal act, the agreement's goal, the final goal was to overthrow the government of the United States, or to destroy, put down, and overthrow the government of the United States. Why? Because in the United States, when there is an election and there is a winner in the election, they are the rightful office holders for the office for which they ran and won. If Donald Trump wanted to not allow that to happen, and he used force through the insurrection and other means through coercion, through blackmailing, through targeting, he employed those other means to the end goal of overthrowing, putting down the government of the United States. The statute of seditious conspiracy reads, conspire to overthrow, to put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States. So here, in each of the subsections, there's also that word or, which means that Donald Trump didn't have to conspire to overthrow and put down and destroy by force the government of the United States. He had to conspire to overthrow, or conspire to put down, or conspire to destroy. So the statute of seditious conspiracy breaks it down as specifically as it can. What are the different things somebody can do in order to be liable under this statute? And Donald Trump did more than one thing. The points that Jack Smith has to prove is that there was an agreement between Donald Trump and the other people who aided him. The end goal being Donald Trump would remain in power. Donald Trump remaining in power is overthrowing the government of the United States by force. Why? Because the election showed that he lost. He lost the election. He went to defraud the Electoral Count Act with the end goal of overthrowing the government of the United States. How? Because he wanted to grab power against the will of the voters. And that would have been an illegal act in defiance of the Electoral Count Act. That would have been a violation of the Electoral Count Act. That would have been a violation of conspiracy to defraud the United States. It would have also been a violation under 18 USC 2384 to seditiously conspire to overthrow the government of the United States by opposing by force the United States authority and by force conspiring to prevent by force, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, being the Electoral Count Act. So, if the statute itself is not very long, you can read it, but many people might think that you have to do all of these things to prove that somebody committed seditious conspiracy. No, you don't. You have to prove certain parts of it, and that's why the statute has or, the word or. It's very important. Little words like shall and or and these things are actually very important in law because they mean the difference between whether the prosecution, in this case, criminal cases, has to prove all of what the statute is saying or just some parts of what the statute is saying. If two or more persons, so the minimum requirement is just two people or more, there can be more, in any state or territory, anywhere in the United States, or anywhere subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, could be a military base somewhere, conspires to overthrow. Conspire meaning has an agreement between two or more people to commit an illegal act along with an intent to achieve the agreement's final goal. So the overt act doesn't have to be illegal, but most of the times it happens to be illegal, right? Because defrauding the electoral vote count, conspiring to defraud the electoral vote count is sort of, is sort of an overthrowing mechanism that's built into, it's a crime inside another crime, inside another crime. It's like the Russian nesting doll of crimes. I've said this many times before. Seditious conspiracy is the Russian nesting doll of crimes, or it's the it's the turducken of crimes. It's one crime on top of another crime on top of another crime, and to break through those layers, the burden of proof lies with the government. Conspires to overthrow or put down or destroy by force, or levy war against, or to oppose by force, or by force prevent, hinder, or delay, or by force seize or take or possess, or, and at the end it says, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned. So, that's the punishment, statutory punishment part of it, for 20 years or no more than 20 years or both. So I want you to, take the time to read the statute if you wish. If you have any questions about the statute, I would be more than happy to answer it. There are many legal scholars who are coming out and explaining the statute. I want people to understand that it is a tall order to get the statute and to meet the elements of the statute. But because the statute breaks it down in such a specific manner, it gives the government the opportunity to pick parts of the statute that applies to a set of acts that would fall within this particular criminal conduct of seditious conspiracy. And there are, and I believe, this is what I believe, I'll end with this. The January 6th committee referred Donald Trump and others for four principal crimes. One was obstruction, two conspiracy statutes, and incitement and rebellion. Each of those statutes falls somewhere within the seditious conspiracy statute violations. I believe that the obstruction element to in seditious conspiracy, where it says by force, prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of the United States, or the conspiracy element of seditious conspiracy, conspire to overthrow, put down, or destroy, or to oppose by force, or to prevent, hinder, or delay. So I believe that the obstruction and the conspiracy statutes that the January 6th committee picked were specific, far more specific statutes of conspiracy and obstruction. And those illegal conducts fall within the different illegal conducts that qualify as satisfying the elements of the seditious conspiracy statute elements and standards. I don't want you to get too confused because it's just crime inside crime inside crime inside crime. But I want you to appreciate how complicated it would be for a prosecutor to parse through all of this, especially since the people closest to Donald Trump have stonewalled the January 6th committee. I don't believe they have the power or the balls to stonewall the Department of Justice. And that's why Donald Trump is coming out and attacking Jack Smith and his family, because that's the only thing Donald Trump can do right now. These people are being compelled to testimony by a grand jury. And that, I believe, will bring up information that will link Donald Trump with the agreement element that is required in conspiracy statutes. That he agreed with these people. There was a meeting of the minds. That there was an understanding between Mark Meadows and Donald Trump of what was happening and what the end goal was. That there was an understanding between Roger Stone and Alex Jones. That there was an understanding between John Eastman and Donald Trump what was happening. And that's where John Eastman's corrupt state of mind will come into play, where he knew what he was doing was illegal. He kept flip-flopping. And then at the very end, he advocated for the illegal act, despite conceding in front of others, namely Mike Pence's legal advisors, that his proposals would violate the Electoral Count Act. That was an overt statement he made in front of Mike Pence's lawyers, Donald Trump, Pat Cipollone, and others sitting in that room when he was proposing this preposterous idea of the fake elector scheme. And then he doubled down and he went forward with that illegal act. And later on, after the insurrection failed, he asked for a pardon. So Jack Smith would have to develop that information, because from our point of view, it's information that is credible because it was provided under oath by several people to the January 6th committee. But the January 6th committee's work was a fact-finding mission that was not prosecutorial in nature. It was an oversight mission of the first branch of our government. It wasn't a prosecutorial mission. It wasn't an investigative mission. It was an oversight mission. We have to understand the difference between the different branches of our government and the powers that they have. Article 1 branch of government doesn't have the power to investigate and prosecute and enforce the laws of the land. The DOJ has that power. So that's why the DOJ's grand jury subpoenas have a bigger bite to them, as opposed to the congressional subpoenas, which we saw really are kind of flimsy. So And it's flimsy mostly because the Congress right now is weak. The Congress right now is weak because there is cantankerous bipartisanship that has plagued our legislature, our national legislature, for well over 20 years. It has grown and developed into this huge, massive cancer that we're dealing with today, with insurrectionists and election deniers sitting on Homeland Security and Judiciary Committee panels in the House. But this slippery slope started a long time ago. This slippery slope started a long time ago when Newt Gingrich decided to use the awesome powers of Congress to impeach Clinton for his offenses. And I think it was lying under oath that he was impeached for. That was a political exercise. And, the impeachment of Donald Trump, both of those were political exercises. But the matter for which he was impeached were far graver of issues. An impeachment by Congress is inherently a political move. But that doesn't mean a political move has to be a partisan move. What Newt Gingrich started, the legacy of that, and what happened with Donald Trump's 2 impeachments has turned impeachment into a partisan tactic, as opposed to a congressional political tool to address and remedy misconduct by officers who would otherwise be shielded from liability. And I believe that the institution of impeachment has been weakened because of partisanship, not because of politicization of it. It is a political matter. What's not a political matter are prosecutions and investigations by the DOJ. And that's why the DOJ and Jack Smith have to comb through the information that the January 6th committee has provided and corroborate this information with each of these people who were willing witnesses, and then subpoena the ones who were unwilling to cooperate with the January 6th committee in order to build the foundation to prove that there was an agreement between Donald Trump and these other people of the end goal, the criminal end goal to overthrow our government. And the overthrow of government, how? By him remaining in power, by Donald Trump remaining in power in defiance of the 2020 election and the will of the people. So I hope that sort of helps a little bit in understanding the statute in order to, I just broke it down a little bit. If you have any questions, I'm trying to find the chat box. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask any questions. There aren't any questions. There are 4 people here. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. And please share. I will come back tomorrow and I will resume the recommendations and then go on to the appendices of the January 6th report. There's still a lot of information there that I believe that people should be reading the report for. Not all of us read in the same way. Some people miss certain points. Some people are slow readers. I did a speed reading of the report, and then I took down relevant sections, and I've been reading them out in the various episodes that have come before this one. And I will probably continue. It's probably going to go to at least another 15 episodes or so. So that compendium of 35 episodes will have what I believe to be the relevant information needed to prove that Donald Trump conspired to overthrow the government of the United States by delaying, hindering, opposing by force laws of the United States and whatever else the statute just read. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.